You may remember this from such places as your childhood, if you were a child of the 1990s that is. It came shipped with a little game called Tetris. There's a really interesting story about how the rights to Tetris were sold out of the USSR. After you're done watching this video, I highly recommend watching that one. Anyway, here's a fun fact. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple Computers, loved Game Boy Tetris so much that he became pretty much unbeatable at it, like best in the nation or maybe the world unbeatable. If you are wondering why his Game Boy in the picture looks different, it's because it is a special edition backlit version of a Game Boy Pocket called the Gameboy Lite, which was only sold in Japan in 1998. But the original Game Boy, called a DMG, was released almost 10 years earlier in 1989, and it was not replaced until the Game Boy Color came out in 1998. Here's the thing. Even on the day it was launched, this thing was not cutting edge. But the inexpensive nature of it made it ubiquitous, and there were some impressive games on it for such a limited piece of technology. So it's an artifact of a technology that existed for a brief moment in time, and much like tube amplifiers of the 1960s, the Game Boy Classic and its big brother the NES have an aural place in our cultural memory for their 8-bit sounds. But we'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, the Game Boy is part of our culture. Here's one that survived a bomb blast in Gulf War I, and it still works. These things are literally bomb-proof, and I kinda love still having one. Mine here is original, except for a replacement screen protector, and well, you can see it for just what it was. But there's so much more that we can do to this thing. So let's start by opening it up. Then we'll scratch these traces off the circuit board and take the 74HC04N chip and connect it like this. Put some shrink tubing over the chip, and now every time one of the pixels in the screen is activated, it will flip twice. This is called biversion, and it makes the screen contrast a lot sharper. But it also inverts all of the pixels, giving you the negative of the image which the game designers intended you to see. To do the biversion mod, you don't have to use this big chip, you can use the smaller version 74HC04D. Either chip costs like $1.50 on eBay, and they wire up exactly the same. But there is a better way. Get this little PCB from retromodding.com, or handheldlegend.com sells the same thing. So much easier. Okay, so the screen is sharper, and you may think the negative image is cool, but how do we make it normal again? It's actually really easy. There is a polarization filter on top of the screen. All we have to do is peel it off and replace it with one rotated at 90 degrees to the original. Fun fact, 2 polarized lenses rotated at 90 degrees will not let any light through. This is how you can test polarized sunglasses. Anyway, I'm not going to peel the filter off of this screen. I'm keeping this unit original, but that's not the case for these ones. We'll get to them in a second. Let's talk about you. If you ever had a Game Boy, I'm going to guess that you don't have it anymore. Not to worry, there is an eBay seller, Japan for You, who sells so many of them. I recommend getting a working unit from him. But there aren't many issues which can't be fixed. These things are bomb-proof after all. If yours has issues, just Google for a solution. Probably you won't like the yellowing on the old case. You can also get replacement cases on eBay. They come with original plastic screen protectors, which scratch easier than getting Prusa fanboys to leave hateful comments on my videos. This case comes with a glass screen that is a lot more scratch resistant. If you want just the glass screen, head over to Kitchbent. They have glass screens with different color bezels, and they also have silicone buttons. I didn't think I was going to like the feel of these, but I really do. Better than the hard plastic. At this point you're thinking, cool, a colorful case, some soft buttons, and a sharper screen. That's a neat project, but I want a backlit screen like Steve Wozniak. Maybe I'll just buy a Game Boy Lite instead. And you can still get a Game Boy Lite on eBay right now for somewhere between $150 and $400, but here's where things get really cool. You can add a freaking backlight to your DMG. Handheld Legends and Retro Modding both sell them in varying colors, but probably your best option is to get a bivert PCB and backlight kit from eBay and save like $3 or $4. To do this mod, you will peel off the polarizing film on the back of the screen instead of the one on the front of the screen. Don't just go hacking away, you will damage the ribbon cables to the LCD. There are some specific techniques in the how-to video provided in the description. All told, you can have a backlit, biverted DMG with a new stylish case for around $70. Add in the cost of a multi-cartridge and you've spent about $125, which doesn't break the bank at all for hours of entertainment. Also, as projects go, this is one of my favorites. As you can probably tell, I had to force myself to stop making them. Speaking of which, let me show you my collection. Starting with my most plain Jane unit here, this has the silicone buttons that I was talking about from Kitschbent, and like I said, I didn't think I was going to like these. They've got a silicone feel, kind of like a kitchen utensil, but it's nicely sticky. It's got good feedback to it. You know where your fingers are, and you can keep on pressing. You can just keep on mashing those buttons, and they give, unlike the hard plastic. So I prefer them over the hard plastic. The glass screen here, you can see I dropped it and chipped the corner right as I was installing it, but that's on the underside, so I can't feel it. It just ends up being a visual defect, and this is probably the original case. Next, I decided to mix things up with a clear case. This reminded me of a telephone that a friend of mine had when we were in middle school, and I love being able to see through to the circuit boards. I got these IKEA batteries because they look nicer, and yeah, it's just it's a lot of fun. These buttons are from an NES controller, so you can just get like a reproduction one of those for like $3 on eBay, and you can see the little arrows on the D-pad, and they feel a little sharper. This is what the buttons look like on the original, so they're more rounded and they don't have the arrows on the D-pad. So actually, I prefer the original feel of buttons, but I hate this purple color. I absolutely love the color scheme on this one. The green screen, for whatever reason, it has the best contrast of all of my screens. Just that backlight just worked out really well, and I just love these 1980s colors. And it's got that sort of translucentness to it, which I actually used on the next one as well. For this one, I got translucent clear buttons, and I put dedicated LEDs behind them so that the buttons light up as well. So very easy to play this one in the dark. Just has a sort of a black box on it. Now, this is a reproduction case as well, but when you buy them on eBay, they come with the copyrighted screen printed Nintendo Game Boy. When you buy them from Retro Modding and Handheld Legend, you don't get this because they don't want to get sued by Nintendo. There's one more unit to show you guys, and I'll tell you more about this here in a few minutes, but for now I just want to talk about the screen. It's got the yellow backlight, which is the most true to the original screen that you're going to get and still be backlit. So yeah, if you're just trying to just ever so slightly modify this, then the yellow screen is the way to go. Comparing this screen to the original, you can see just how much of a difference the Biversion mod makes in the contrast. I think it's the single best upgrade you can do. I mean, the backlights are pretty cool too, giving you the ability to play in the dark, but they do have one drawback. They make it so that you can no longer play in direct sunlight. Now, you may have noticed the hum coming from the speaker on these DMGs. The stock amplifier board is terrible. In an attempt to alleviate this, I got this capacitor and soldered it here. It takes away some of the higher frequencies of the hum, but overall, meh, not recommended. A much better solution is this replacement amplifier mini PCB from Retro Modding, but it costs $20 freaking. So I recently did some searching on the internets and I found this board for $1.50 on eBay. I have to figure out how to combine the left and right channels from stereo into mono without blowing out the little speaker. Probably it's just going to take an inline resistor, but at 1/14 the cost, I think this is the better solution. No matter what you do, you will still probably have a problem with the volume potentiometer wheel here on the side. It snaps and crackles. To my knowledge, there's not much you can do about it except to try to clean the dust out of it with a blast of air. Now that we have a cool looking Game Boy with upgraded style and functionality, what games are we going to play? Tetris is obvious, so is Super Mario Land 2. Donkey Kong and Gargoyle's Quest are two more that I love. I got my cartridges from eBay, but once again, there is a better way. Enter the multi-cartridge. This one is from the Ukraine, and this one is from the Game Boy modification expert Ben, located somewhere in Australia, I think. So basically, you can go get ROMs of games somewhere on the internet, and put as many as you like on the cartridge. I'm pretty sure that you can get the entire catalog onto one of these. It's weird that you are playing ROMs, but is it truly emulation when you are playing on the original system? Also, it's worth noting that technically, if you don't own the original game cartridge, having ROMs is stealing. I mean, these games are pretty much abandonware. Nintendo and Capcom or whoever already got rich from these games like 25 years ago, but they still own the copyrights, so proceed down this path according to your own morality and judgment. But the best thing about the ROM cartridge is the ability to play games which were never produced on a dedicated cartridge or officially endorsed by Nintendo. These homebrew games can be really cool. I'll link to some that I have found. Just as an example, 8Bitty Games has a puzzle game that I like called Yarn Ball, and they also have this little music tracker. Pretty cool to see new game designs on a 30-year-old console. That cannot have been easy to do. Wouldn't it be cool if we could get all the modern hits on DMG, like Flappy Bird, 2048, Threes, Candy Crush? Actually, I think Candy Crush is kind of a knockoff of a Mario puzzle game, but that's beside the point. Speaking of programming for the DMG and making music on a DMG, let me tell you guys about the best thing to ever happen to the classic Game Boy since it was discontinued: LSDJ. This is a crazy intricate and crazy capable music tracker. There are DJs who have based their entire career on this program and these consoles. It's one major facet of the music genre called chiptunes. And while the genre doesn't have that new car smell anymore, it's still a rich scene. I think the major encumbrance is the fact that modern trackers on high-end PCs have so much functionality, they can pretty much duplicate the sound of a Game Boy and do all that other modern stuff too. But for the purists, nothing beats the sound of original hardware. Similar to audiophiles who swear by vacuum tube amplifiers, if you are nostalgic for that 80s polyphony, you gotta be running original hardware. Which brings us to the final thing I want to show you guys, my most modified Game Boy. Starting with the RCA jacks here at the top of the Game Boy, that's called a Pro Sound mod, and I accomplished the same thing here on the clear unit with this 3.5mm jack, the extra one that I added here. Now, this circuit board that you're seeing through the clear case, that's the crappy amplifier board here inside the Game Boy. So by bypassing that board with those wires that go up to the potentiometer wheel up here, you get a much cleaner audio output. So let's take that audio output and put it in through a tube amplifier here, tuned up to a good volume. And I've got a little loop here that I programmed into LSDJ just for this video. So I'm going to press start on that loop, and then I'm going to flip this switch and slide the potentiometer here. I've got a slide potentiometer that's, you'll see what it does here in a second. So let's just press start. Hear the pitch go up, and I can change the pitch. So yeah, just think of it as a whammy bar for chiptunes, which also lets you cheat at Tetris. It's level 9. If you take a keyboard with a PS2 style jack and splice a Game Boy Quick Connect jack onto the wire, I'll put right there, there's a little graphic. Now you're gonna have to disassemble this jack. You can see the dent where I was disassembling it, because you're gonna need to move those pins around, but it's not that hard to do. Anyway, once you've accomplished that, you can remove the unnecessary keys and you're left with the LSDJ keyboard. So this does more than just play the notes. You can also navigate through the menus, and all the buttons do stuff. So it's just a nice aid to help you compose an LSDJ in that little tracker. But the problem is that you can only play one note at a time using this keyboard. If you want to play multiple notes through the Game Boy, you're going to have to get some sort of a MIDI connector. This is a DIY MIDI board. I tried to modify a cheap, MIDI Arduino hat from eBay, and it didn't work. It might have something to do with the Arduino that I'm using, might not be the correct chipset on that. But yeah, there are options, and there's tons of tutorials for this kind of stuff on the internet if you're interested. And that is your introduction to the classic DMG Game Boy for 2019, which also happens to be the 30-year anniversary of this super capable little console. This video was brought to you by these amazing Patreon supporters. Thank them in the comments or join their ranks. Thanks for watching. See you next time. But wait, there's even more. The DMG wasn't the last Nintendo handheld which you could easily modify. That didn't really stop until the DS Lite, which can be made into a Gameboy Macro, so that it doesn't look like a crappy PDA, but still retains the ability to play Game Boy Advance cartridges. For my money, this is really the best, the AGS 101 Game Boy Advance SP. Now, the Game Boy Advance SP AGS 001 had a front light, so the screen was not nearly as nice to look at. If you can't find a 101, you can get a 101 screen and install it into an AGS 001. Ben makes an adapter for that, and this option might end up being less expensive. Alternately, you can install an AGS 101 screen into a Game Boy Advance like mine. This one has a glass screen protector, and the case glows in the dark. The best thing about these two is that they will play cartridges from the DMG, Game Boy Color, and of course, there are multi-cartridges for them as well. Basically, these have a great screen and allow you to play all of the Game Boy games from 1989 through 2004 when the DS was released. Now, a lot of people like the Advance better because of the hand position, but I found this Intech grip on eBay like 3 years ago, and I've never found another one since. With the handle and the Mario sticker, this one is my favorite for playing games. But for chiptunes and nostalgia, you can't beat a DMG. Now, if you want one of these, you might consider just buying one which has already been modded by an expert. Expect to pay around $125 for just the console. Retro Modding has an online configurator, and you can find them on eBay too. It is worth noting that it's a little bit more fiddly to do the mods on these later units, so if you've never done this kind of work before, you should probably start with a DMG. Finally, there is this cute little guy, the Gameboy Macro. No modifications needed. With a multi-cartridge, it can play the same 15 years worth of games, but the old cartridges themselves won't physically plug into the body. The screen is a lot smaller, but I mean, what do you expect? It's called the Micro for a reason. What Game Boy collection would be complete without the obligatory Raspberry Pi 3B running RetroPie, Raspbian Linux, and Emulation Station? I was contracted by Kitschbent to design this case. This was right around the time when the Pi 3 had just been released and the Game Boy Zero had not yet become a thing. Kitsch was thinking that people would want a unit for the more powerful Pi 3, and for a while there he ran a website for the Super Game Girl separately from Kitschbent, but it must not have been profitable, and aside from this sample, I don't think that any cases were ever produced. This might be a one-off. It sure is beautiful though. I tried to be as true to the original design as I possibly could be, and I think I was successful. You can't source the PCBs for a Super Game Girl anymore because Kitsch stopped selling them, so if you want something like this, you're probably going to build a Game Boy Zero. It won't be as powerful, but it will be a lot cheaper. Okay, links in the doobly-doo. Thanks for watching.